interesting topic. A topic that is very challenging, and it's the challenge of Christian Zionism in the context of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, in the context of what's happening here. And I was given the title, Christian Zionism and the Conflict. And the question is, what are the views that the peoples of this land have towards Christian Zionism? What are the views of Jews, Christians, and Muslims when it comes to Christian Zionisms? And with the thanks to the media department, we're going to do this presentation as a joint presentation between my talking and some reflections and insights that we're going to listen to video. So let's listen to the first views done by Palestinian Christians locally on Christian Zionism.
Palestine document is the voice of Palestinian Christians who are calling for justice to the Palestinians. This group made up of Christian leaders, Palestinian Christian leaders, are basically saying that God is a God of justice, and it can't be possible, since we're created in the image of God, that we are lacking a right to life. And the second, then, Christianity is about the good news. And where are the good news for Palestinians? The news that promote life rather than death. We find this is lacking. And allow me to read something from this document that was written by these ecumenical Christian leaders that says, therefore we declare that any use of the Bible to legitimize or support political options and positions that are based upon injustice, imposed by one person on another or by one people on another, transform religion into human ideology, and strip the word of God of its holiness, its universality, and truth. I'm a Bethlehem Christian, and Christianity is very, very dear to me. And I find Christian Zionism is creating a very serious schism in the very whole idea, the whole philosophy of Christianity. Even the reputation of Christianity in the world today, when religion really matters, I believe, and can be a source of peace.
Well, you see, the Palestinian people, both Christians and Muslims, are locked in a serious existential conflict with the Zionist movement. Some would say we are the victims of Zionism. We certainly are enemies and in conflict with the political Zionist movement. So Christian Zionism comes and says, we are clearly on the side of your enemies. We are clearly on the other side. But not only are we clearly your political enemies, we are doing it in the name of Christ. We are doing it in the name of Christianity. There is basically no room in Christian Zionism for Palestinian Christians. We don't exist. Christians and Zionists are one. The Palestinian people and the enemies of the state of Israel are on the other. And we as Christians don't exist. To the extent that we exist at all, we have to negate ourselves. We have to betray not only our people, but we have to betray our identity. Maybe create some other name for us, call ourselves Arameans or something like that. Because Palestinians, by definition, are in conflict with Zionists, and if Christian Zionism is true, they're in conflict with God and with Christianity. And then the challenge comes to Christian Zionists themselves. Who are you? What do you believe in? What are your priorities? Are you genuine Christians who happen to have political views and differences? Or are you primarily political activists on behalf of Zionism who use their Christianity to promote their political agenda rather than the real love of Christ?
So from these videos and from many views, we see two major components here when it comes to the Palestinian Christian struggle with Christian Zionism. And what I want to try to do very briefly is to create a new understanding of how we should be looking into this understanding of Christian Zionism. So the first is the theological disagreement. Very clearly, there are very powerful theological points of view made within the church when it comes to Christian Zionism. And I would actually say I personally believe that it is very dangerous when any theology bases its theology on fear, terror towards and from the other, and isolation of and from the other. This is very dangerous, and it is too focused when it comes to how we relate to each other. The sad reality that I also believe that it's not just Christian Zionism that is promoting theologies of fear and isolation from each other. One of the challenges that I think the church is facing today is by putting us all on the spectrum of how much fear do we stand for instead of how much love are we ready to commit to. As this being the challenge, the theological challenge, I also want to say, from my very little knowledge of biblical history and understanding, is that the church has always been engaging and debating in theology. From the times of Peter and Paul, and maybe if we added Mary to that equation, she would have had a say or two in that debate itself. We have always had serious theological disagreements within the body of the family of the faithful, and some have led to war between denominations themselves and towards others. Recently, there was a statistic that came out that says the number of Christian denominations worldwide is, do you know how many now? 49,000 denominations. That's how many denominations are in our faith. So to actually think of an idea that at one point we will have a common theological view together, it's going to be quite miraculous to happen that with the increase in division. So we will continue to debate theology probably until the end of days. And so for me, the challenge that I want to give all of you today is not about how do we challenge theology, but how do we challenge fear that is planted and manifested in certain theologies themselves. The second point of view is the political one-sidedness that Jonathan Kutab talked about. Yes, for us in this land, this is a serious challenge. It's a major one. In the US and many areas in the world, the influence of the Zionist church on politics is strong, directly affects our life here, and not just in the physical presence, directly affects how we as Christians are living our life in this land. When we hear certain statements made by certain Zionist Christian leaders in how they refer to Palestinians, to Arabs and Muslims, we, the evangelical community, are many times seen as guilty by association. We become on the defensive instead of proactively engaging in what we are called to engage in. But also this said, do we actually believe that it is in the Zionist church where the making or the breaking of the peace in this land exists? Is it in the Zionist church where justice would be manifested in this land? I'm going to argue and say no. It is up to the peoples of this land to engage in the proactive movement for peace and justice in this land. I also believe that the church does have a voice, and it is an important voice, that the church needs to have a Christ-like approach to peace and reconciliation. But if we are honest with each other and look at the sad reality, especially of the American church, the conservative church, which the Zionist church somehow affiliates itself with, when we talk about issues of peace and justice in the US or around the world, that church has always been the last to get on the wagon. Look into our history. Look into the apartheid movement in South Africa. When did the evangelical conservative church jump on the bandwagon to end apartheid? Look at the AIDS epidemic in Africa. We could even still remember some of the statements that some of the pastors spoke towards people who were infected with AIDS. Let us look at today in the US and look at the civil rights movement and racism in the US. Where does the church stand on these issues? So for us as Palestinians and Israelis to say we are going to depend on the church for it to be transformed so that peace can come here, this is a long shot. We are accountable and responsible. So stating that the theology is important but not everything. Stating that the politics, or to change the politics is important but not everything. The question is, then what is the challenge? What is the challenge that the Christian Zionist Church is presenting to us as Palestinians and especially the local Palestinian church? This might seem very simple, but in my simple faith, I believe that Jesus was not as much about theology and politics as much as he was about wanting us to engage in the basic reconnection with ourselves and with our Creator. And one of the key challenges that I believe is deeply missing in how the Zionist Church relates to this conflict, relates to me as a Palestinian, is in the simple act of listening. I would say that the rejection of listening to the Palestinian voice by using the political and theological lens as the means to filter out my pain and my cry is the biggest challenge and danger we face by the Zionist Church. I would actually call it a sin against us when we are refused to be heard. The Zionist Church needs to listen without arrogance, without judgment, without condemnation, without argumentation, and without negation. Without analyzing every word and asking the question, what is the hidden agenda of Christ at the checkpoint? Do we listen? Do we listen? I am proud to say that yes. This conference is the space we have opened for 8 years straight, inviting all of the voices to come and be heard. Do we get invited to be listened to? Do we get invited to even listen to the other? Sadly, I would say it is very rare that the Christian Zionist Church would invite us to speak in their settings and have our voices heard. Is it easy for us? It is not. It really has not been easy for us. But we still have a long way to go. I believe that one of the unique aspects of our faith is that it is not theology or politics that determine it. While I do have respect for different religions that have a deep-rooted commitment to politics, to the law, to the land itself, our faith is founded in salvation, and therefore this connects me and my Christian Zionist brother and sister together. Our salvation should trump our ideology, theology, and politics. We, and I say this for all of us, need to listen in the way that Jesus would listen to any individual that lived in his time, the way Jesus would listen to anybody living in our time today. And this is a challenge to those who do not seek to listen as being driven again by fear. When I am not listened to, the only justification I have is you are afraid of listening to me because maybe you are not deeply founded in your conviction of what you believe. We need to listen to each other no matter what. So now we're going to do a little test for all of us. A test in listening. Over the last few years, we have been listening to voices that truly are voices of opposition to what we believe in. I challenge you to take this as an exercise in listening to these voices that some of you will fully disagree with. And I challenge you to listen to these voices that will actually trigger anger in some of you. How can we be in this place of tension where we are able to have compassion, love, and care and listen beyond even the words that are being spoken? After listening, the next step for me is to ask ourselves, what can we say that opens the heart of the other? I believe that when Jesus talked to the Samaritan woman about her multiple husbands, it was not about judgment or condemnation or even to challenge her. I believe, first of all, he listened to her and then asked her a question that touched a point of pain in her heart. An experience or behavior that she did that took her off her own track for her own life. Why would he ask her to go to the village and bring her husbands to meet him if it wasn't for the intention of healing, reconciling, and liberating all of them through him? So he was able to ask the right question that opened her heart to address the point of pain that needed healing. We are going to listen to two voices of local Muslim leaders, and I'm going to call them friends, who are politically active in the Palestinian Legislative Council and are members of Hamas. Then we will listen to a voice of another friend, a Zionist Jewish settler. All three are friends of mine. They will give their response to Christian Zionism. And I want to beg you not to look at this purely from the political, theological, ideological sense of extremist or not extremist, of putting apples and oranges together in the same video, or how I reflect on them. I challenge you to listen from a different space of what we are usually used to. Our space of listening has always been, do I agree or disagree? Do I judge or assert? Is what he or she is saying right or wrong? Listen from a place of asking, what is behind the words that you are hearing? What is the compassion I can give to the speaker as he is speaking? And more importantly, what is a next step that I can seek to build fellowship and relationship with the person that even triggered in me the challenge the most?
هؤلاء الملايين الموجودة عندنا من أين جاءت؟ هم يعني 70 أو 90 جنسية. هم يحملون الجنسية الروسية، يحملون الجنسية الألمانية، يحملون الجنسية الأمريكية، يحملون الجنسية الفرنسية. إذن هم ليسوا عربا أصلا. هم جاءوا من دول قائمة موجودة. إذن هم الذين جاءوا وعمرهم قصير، يعني 48 ل 2016 أنت بتتحدث 68 سنة. بينما نحن أجدادنا كانوا هنا مئات آلاف السنين. فإذا كانت القضية دينيا لا يوجد دليل ديني أن لهم هذه أرض كما يسمونها أرض الميعاد. لا يوجد دليل ديني. تاريخيا والله عاشوا في زمن داود وسليمان 70 سنة في فلسطين. عاش المسلمون في الأندلس 800 سنة. صحيح؟ نروح نقول والله هذه الأندلس إن لازم نقتل أهل الأندلس وأهل البرتقال. 800 سنة الدولة الإسلامية كانت في إسبانيا في الأندلس. إذن تاريخيا، حتى تاريخيا قانونيا لا يوجد لهم حجة قانونية في أن يقتلوا شعب ويقتلعوه من أرضه ثم يقول والله فإحنا بنقول أوروبا رمتنا بدائها وانسلت. أوروبا رمتنا بهؤلاء، أقامت هذا الكيان حتى يكون لهم قاعدة متقدمة في أرضنا بلاد العرب والمسلمين، حتى تبقى هذه البلاد من أجل ينفذوا اتفاقيات سيكس بيكو. فرقوا هذه الأرض فقطعوها بالحدود اللي احنا يعني نعظمها أكثر من حدود الله. وهي وزير خارجية بريطانيا ووزير خارجية فرنسا بالمسطرة هم على الطاولة قسموها. أليست بلاد عربية، بلاد الشام والجزيرة والمغرب العربي وشمال أفريقيا.
عندما نتكلم عن الأديان السماوية بشكل عام لابد أن يعني نتذكر أننا نتكلم عن سماحة عدل أينما كانت، لكن الصحيح ما يرد إلى يعني أسمعنا في هذا الوقت عن ذلك التيار في الكنيسة المسيحية الذي يسمى بالصهيو مسيحية. حقيقة نحن نستغرب من هذا اللقاء إن كان السياسي أو الديني حتى عندهم، لأنه يتكلم عن إقامة دولة باطلة على أرض طبعا للشعب الفلسطيني. هذا الشعب المقهور الذي قامت طبعا الإسرائيليين والصهيونية العالمية قامت بإقامة هذا الكيان لهم هنا على غرار وعلى أنقاض هذا الشعب المسكين. من أجل ذلك عندما نتكلم عن الدين المسيحي الذي تكلم عنه السيد المسيح عليه السلام، دين الرحمة، دين المحبة، لا يمكن أن يستوي هذا الدين أو هذه القيم مع ما يقوم به الاحتلال في أرض فلسطين. الدين المسيحي دين طبعا المحبة، دين العدل كما علمنا السيد المسيح عليه السلام، ولا يمكن لهذه القيم السماوية السامحة أن تلتقي مع احتلال ظالم جائر كما طبعا تدعو له هذه الفئة طبعا من الكنيسة التي تسمى الكنيسة الصهيو مسيحية.
So I first want to begin with the concept of replacement theology. From my perspective as a Jew who feels the burden of Jewish history and of Jewish suffering on his back, replacement theology has been one of the curses of history, curses in the relationship between Jews and Christians. On the basis of replacement theology, the approach that says the Jewish people have been rejected by God and replaced by another people, that we have been despised by God. On the basis of that understanding, Jews have been killed, persecuted, defamed, tarred and feathered in a terrible fashion for 2,000 years, almost 2,000 years. With the beginning of Darbyism and Christian Zionism, we have, from my perspective, the Christian nation turning over a new leaf. And this developing rapprochement between the Jewish people and Christianity that's been going on for about 200 years, for me it's a miracle. It's a miracle, just like the return of the Jewish people to the land is a miracle. So the developing rapprochement between Christians and Jews that's based on the repudiation of Christian theology, that rapprochement is a miracle that I thank God for every day. So that's the beginning of my approach to Christian Zionism. It's a blessing not only here in the land of Israel, but it's a blessing around the world, wherever Jews and Christians live together and have a basis now for dialogue and understanding and mutual respect. The second point is simply that Christian Zionism has and continues to defend Israel against its many, many enemies. Israel has many who want to see its demise, who don't accept its existence. We might be talking about Iran, we might be talking about Hezbollah, we might be talking about Hamas. There are many, many nations, United Nations, who long before 1967 automatically vote against Israel and would like to see it disappear. So we need all the friends we can get. And we're happy to have friends who actively support us politically, vocally, and with financial aid. That's important to us, extremely important to us. Thirdly, I would mention, after those 2 points of why Christian Zionism is so positively important to me, that the theology of the end game, the end times, doesn't really concern me. They're Christians and I'm a Jew. We don't share, we don't see eye to eye in many issues of theology. So here's another one. What's going to happen at the at the end, if it's going to be the first coming of the Messiah, the second coming of the Messiah, is going to be a big world war, there's not going to be. There's going to be whatever there's going to be. That's theology. It doesn't concern me. What concerns me is the present. And in the present, like I said, we have the repudiation of replacement theology, and we have the support of the State of Israel. Now, just like I'm a Zionist, and 90% of the Jewish world today are Zionists, Zionism is a big tent, and we're part of one world movement, but there are many Zionists that I disagree with. In addition to me being a Jew and a Zionist and a settler, I'm also a passionate advocate for Palestinian rights and Palestinian dignity, and that puts me at odds with certainly a large percentage of Jewish Zionists. It also puts me at odds with Christian Zionists. Just like I'd like to see Jewish Zionists passionately advocating for Israel and passionately advocating for the Palestinians, I would like to see Christian Zionists continuing to passionately advocate for Jews in Israel, but also advocating at the same time for the Palestinians. I'd like to see a Zionism that has the Jewish fate and the Jewish good on one shoulder and has the Palestinian fate and the Palestinian good on the other shoulder. Most rabbis today, whether they are Orthodox rabbis, Reform rabbis, or conservative rabbis, and most Jews today, deeply distrust Christian Zionism. And that's for a number of reasons. One of the reasons is because most Christian Zionists are on the conservative right end spectrum of the American political map, and most Jews in America are towards the left. That's one reason. A second reason is because Jews have an instinctive suspicion of Christians after 2,000 years of persecution, and they carry that in the heart and on their back. And a third reason for the Jewish opposition is the things that you just mentioned in the question, that sense that they just want to convert us and they want to have us dead, and they're just using us for their end time scenario. So I, in my work as a rabbi in America, did a lot of my homework in researching these matters, and I say that as far as the right-left divide, I don't really care. There are people who are my allies for one issue, and they're not my allies for another issue. If Christian Zionists are on the right-hand side of the map and most Jews on the left-hand side, more or less, but if the Christian Zionists are with us in one important issue, we'll take that support on that one issue. The other matter of thousands of years of Christian persecution, well, it seems to me that in many cases the Christian Zionists are those who are trying to overcome that and turn over a new leaf. I've heard so many Christian Zionists cry and tell me we are so contrite, we're so pained by all the hate that replacement theology has caused and all the Jews who have killed, and even connect their past theology to the Holocaust. And I have to accept that repentance with an open heart and with open arms and say the past is behind us. We're now turning over a new leaf in Jewish-Christian relations. And like I said earlier, that's miraculous for me. Now, the third point of the theology of wanting to convert Jews or to have the Jews killed, from my investigations, many Christian Zionists don't want to convert me. I should say that more clearly, are not in the business of converting me. Not in the business of converting us now. The Christian Zionists that I've worked with, take for example Pastor John Hagee, Kufi, Christians United for Israel. Take for example Bridges for Peace. Take for example Eagle's Wings and many other organizations. They have told us directly, and in some cases even signed papers that say that conversion of Jews is not on their agenda. When I say not on their agenda, I mean their active agenda, their applied agenda in the present. Of course, they would like to convert Jews in a theoretical sense, but that's not their priority, and that's what's happening right now. And as far as wanting to have us killed, the ones I've worked with don't want to have us killed presently. They might see an endgame scenario, and it's lots of people are going to die, not just Jews. Christians as well, or lapsed Christians.